here we go, 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 here we go.
And welcome back to another episode of Containers on the Couch. I haven't seen you for a while, everybody. So firstly, welcome back. Thank you for joining in again. We have a nice number of viewers here on our screen. Don't forget to say hi, hello in the chat. Let us know where you're joining from. My name is Meish, but I'm first going to introduce my wonderful guest who I've known for a good number of years. We've known each other from previous lives in different kinds of technology. So Massimo, would you please like to introduce yourself, who you are, what you do at AWS?
Thanks, Maish, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. My name is Massimo Referre. I've been with AWS for, more than 6 years at this point. I've been working through a number of roles. Right now, I work in product, and I'm working in what we call the next generation developer experience organization. And for all practical purposes, think of this role as working on Amazon Q, which is the product that I'm spending most of my time on.
Well, thank you very much. And you're from Italy, if I remember correct? Milan?
I am from Italy. Yeah, northern Milan, outside of the city, as I usually say.
Okay.
But yeah,
outside the city.
I actually
and my
live
name is
between Milan and Como. And when I say this, people go like, "Oh, I love that place." Yeah, it's not bad.
Never been to Como. I've been to Milan before, but that's okay.
Yeah.
And my name is Meish Casing. I'm a developer advocate for the ECS service team. And we're back today to talk about a topic which is something which you might have heard about before. It's called Amazon Q. And I wanted to take this actual whole discussion to a slightly different direction of not what generative AI is and what we can use it for, or how we use it and what it can give us, and how we can create amazing things with all these wonderful technologies we have, but more on the fact of how I would use it in my daily work to help me when I'm working with ECS. But before we go there, let's again welcome everybody again from the chat. Don't forget to say hi. Let us know where you're joining from. I do apologize that today we're going to be doing something slightly different. I'm going to be doing the demos and not somebody who's talking to on my guest today. So I'm going to be paying a little less attention to the chat, but I will still keep an eye out for that. But forgive me if their responses are slightly slow. So let's start. Most of the people which are watching this show today on the live stream know what ECS is, but what is Amazon Q?
Do you want me to answer that?
I would like you to know, but I think you're the best person to answer that.
Yeah. No. I was trying to figure if you were talking about this and then letting me go deeper, or if you wanted me to start.
What is Amazon Q, Massimo?
Yeah, thanks. No, Amazon Q is your generative AI assistant for work. That's how we define Amazon Q. Amazon Q has a number of expertise, two of which are your business expert. That is one of the expertise. Think about a generative AI assistant that knows everything about your organization, your private data, your knowledge inside the organization, and can help you find those information, right? Using natural language. The other expertise, which is, by the way, the expertise that I'm working on, is the AWS expertise. So Q is also, of course, an expert in AWS, and you can use Amazon Q Developer. That's how we call that expertise throughout all the phases of the software development lifecycle. So from building the application to deploy the application to debug the application. So Amazon Q is a general product that you can find also in other places, in addition to the console or the IDE for Amazon Q developer. For example, you can find Amazon Q in QuickSight, in Connect, and in many other places throughout all the Amazon or AWS product and services.
So essentially, it would be like if I would take your personal assistant to help you do whatever you want to do in the cloud.
Exactly. And the expertise that I was referring to bind to specific persona, right? So the Amazon Q business expertise, so your business expert typically binds to the knowledge worker inside your organization, whereas the AWS expertise, which is the Amazon Q developer queue, maps to or binds to the developer, right, or the builder, which is the person that is building stuff on top of AWS.
And I assume that we have a documentation, but if you can give me, how does this actually work? In other words, we provide, or the customer provides it a knowledge source and a source of some sort, or multiple sources of knowledge. And based on that, Q can understand from that information and provide a knowledgeable and intelligent answer for the question which is coming from the customer.
Yeah. Well, you describe maps mostly the Amazon Q for Business. Think of Amazon Q for Business as an expert that can ingest the data, right, that you own, your corporate data, the data that your knowledge user are going to use and interrogate, so to speak. So the process there is you need to point to this data, and this data can live. I think that we have more than 40 connectors that can suck this data from various places, from S3 to Office 365, Salesforce, all sort of connectors. And the way that Amazon Q for Business work is that you can build what we call application, which are mostly chat interfaces that this knowledge worker can use to interrogate these backend data. For Amazon Q developer, there isn't this notion of ingesting the data, because by definition, we have created this knowledge inside of Amazon Q developer, this knowledge about AWS. So in a sense, it's ready to use, right? And there are pieces that you can customize. Just for example, you can customize the fact today that you have a private code base, for example, that you want to use to augment the knowledge that Amazon Q developer has in terms of suggesting piece of code, because by default Amazon Q suggests code that is publicly available, whereas you have the opportunity to customize part of Amazon Q developer through Code Whisperer for these code suggestions in the IDE.
So you mentioned Code Whisperer, and I've been hearing a lot about something which is called Amazon Bedrock and now Q. How do all of these things connect together? Are they the same system, completely different technologies? Are they connected in any way?
Yeah, great question. So let's split this discussion in what is Bedrock and how Bedrock relates to Q and how Code Whisperer relates to Q. So let's start with Bedrock. The way that I usually talk about what we're doing from a generative AI perspective, which includes obviously Amazon Q, is I use this notion of the 3 layers that we have. And these 3 layers are the core layer, the infrastructure layer, where you meet things like our optimized hardware to run inference, for example, Inferentia, or you train your model on Trainium. the specific hardware designed to do these sort of things. Typically, you would use something, a system like SageMaker, to carry out all the processes at this infrastructure layer. The second layer that lives on top of this infrastructure layer is Bedrock. A lot of customers are telling us, like, I don't want to intercept the AWS infrastructure at the first layer because it's too low level for me. I don't want to build a model. I don't want to do very basic stuff. I just want to consume one of these or more of these foundational models that we provide through Bedrock, right? So Bedrock is a system that abstracts some or a lot of these complexity that you find at the infrastructure layer, so that basically you can consume these large language models like Claude, for example, or Titan, just simply through an API, right? You get your credential and you can start consuming those. The third layer is where Amazon Q comes in. And the third layer usually are the applications that are built on top of these LLMs. So in a way, the relationship between Bedrock and Amazon Q is that Amazon Q has been built on top of Bedrock. Amazon Q uses generative AI. It uses large language models. This large language model capability comes through Bedrock. So we consume Bedrock. In terms of the relationship between Amazon Q and Code Whisperer, think about Amazon Q as the assistant. Code Whisperer is it provides functionalities that are related to generative AI, but they are sort of limited to the IDE and the inline coding suggestion. But you need to think about Amazon Q as being your assistant. As a matter of fact, we are in public preview right now with Amazon Q, so everybody can use it for free while it's in public preview. But when we go GA and we have announced pricing for Amazon Q, if you buy Amazon Q or if you subscribe to Amazon Q, you will get all the Code Whisperer functionalities. So there is always this question about, oh, do I need to subscribe to Code Whisperer and Amazon Q, specifically Amazon Q Developer? The answer is no, you don't. If you subscribe to Amazon Q, you get the whole thing. So you get Amazon Q Developer plus the Code Whisperer functionalities.
Okay. And I assume that you mentioned the IDE. Why is it so important for integrating these things in the IDE? But we'll actually see that in the demo afterwards, but I would like to hear your thoughts. Why is it so important for us to provide this functionality as part of the IDE?
It is important because if you think about Amazon Q Developer, we're talking about Amazon Q Developer here. Surfacing in the IDE is super important because if you think about Amazon Q as the assistant that helps you to figure out the entire software development lifecycle, the IDE is one of the main places where these SDLC takes place, right? The IDE is usually where you build your software, you run unit tests, maybe you do a bunch of things in your IDE, and the assistant needs to surface in the IDE. The way that I usually think about Amazon Q, specifically Amazon Q Developer, is doing a parallel with Alexa, right? So when you think about Alexa, you think about like your assistant, right? Alexa is a very generic assistant, but think about Alexa as the brain, and I think about Amazon Q Developer as that brain, right? Then I think about Alexa devices more like the places where Amazon Q Developer surfaces. So Alexa, you can find Alexa on your phone. You can find Alexa on your dot device. You can find Alexa in many other places, right? And similarly, you can find Amazon Q Developer in the IDE, on the AWS console, on the AWS documentation, in Slack, and in a bunch of other places. Code Catalyst, for example, or in your CLI. I think that you're going to show that.
Yeah, we're going to have a look at that as well for one of the demos as well.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think? Should we start maybe having a demo and see how we can do this?
Yep. Yeah. Let's
Okay.
go.
So before we do the demo, I want to firstly say thank you, PCS from Toronto, for saying hi in the chat. It was very nice that you said hello to everybody. Don't worry. If you have any questions, please, of course, drop them in the chat. We'll try to get to them. And again, I apologize for not monitoring the chat properly this time, because I'm also going to be doing some demos at the same thing. So at that, as we've said that, hold on, let me just see how I get rid of this. Add my credentials. No, it's not what I wanted. But anyway, here we go. So this is my IDE, VS Code. And I have a plugin from AWS, which is called the Amazon Q plugin, which I've installed. Part of it, you can download it. I'll put it's very simple to find it. But in any event, I've installed a plugin in my IDE where, as part of my workflow, and you have my regular browser for my editor for all my files or whatever I would like to do. But in this case, I want to go and start working with the IDE with Amazon Q. So assuming you are a new user who has absolutely nothing to know about containers, you have a little bit of a dabbling in, I know how to write code, I can write my application, and I want to say, okay, so I have my application and I have a regular web server which says hello world in this case, and I want to know how I put it into a container. So in this case, I can ask Q, Amazon Q, what the question is, and it's going to be typing errors because I'm not that good of a typist, so we'll have to wait and see. So in this case, how would I build hello world app in a container? What Q does goes, based on the knowledge that it has, it goes and provides me an answer. In this case, it says you have the code that you need in order to print your hello world in your container. In this case, it's written in Go. I can ask it to give me the same thing in Python or in Node.js. We'll do that in a second. And from there, it gives you the instructions of how to create your actual container with all the specific commands. In this case, Docker build. I'm not going to go through all of these because this is just, in order for me to do that, we copying and pasting. That's pretty much not a very good use of our time. But in this case, Amazon Q went out and found a answer for my question, understood what I was looking for, and provided me the specific, also above and beyond that, also links for where I got much of this information. If I would like to, I can, and of course, this is a conversational chat, so I can continue asking, for this case, build me a hello world, a containerized container, I can't type as I said, containerized app, but in Python. So it should do the same kind of thing. Will give me the basics, whatever it gives me, create a Python file, print, and will give me also the same information that I had before of how to do this. So it understands context pretty much. Of course, I can't say this is 100% accurate and give me exactly what I want, but at least it will give you the beginning of how you can build these things directly with an answer. And if, of course, additional input and more resources where you can go and dive deeper into based on the information that you're looking for. So assuming that I have my container application, I run it, I build my Docker image, and then I say, okay, that's nice, it's working. I get my HTTP localhost. And I now want to say, okay, but how do I use this in ECS? So I know that I need to take this Docker image and upload it into an ECR repository. So I'm going to ask you, how do I take this Docker image and upload to ECR? And hopefully it should give me a good answer, which will say you take the operating, gives you the commands in order what you need to do in order to log into the ECR in order to get your credentials. And from there, you add the correct image with the tag name and pushing the same image into your specific ECR repository in your account. Now, of course, all this information is located, and you'll see the references here, comes from the documentation. But instead of me having to go and open up another browser and search in my browser to have a look for the information, you have this, as we say, this personal assistant inside your IDE, which will speed up your work on a regular basis in a much, much easier way without having to do the context switch and get 15 different pop-ups and whatever from different advertisements from you if your browser, unless you have an ad blocker. But still, all of this is built into your IDE. It provides you a very streamlined experience for how to do this. So I'm taking that information even better. But okay, I now have my image in ECR. How would I take this image and now use it in ECS? So in ECS, I know I have a task definition. So I'm going to ask you, can you create a task definition with the container above? As I said, I can't type properly, for Amazon ECS.
You're doing great, Maish.
Amazon Q, and it gives me, in this case, what will my task definition look like for my specific task, the name of the task, which is the name application. It will give you all the specific JSON string that I need and all the configuration for the port mappings, how I can actually use this and get started with my ECS task definition. And there are a number of things, for example, I can even go further in this way. For example, I can see that this task definition is using the network mode for AWS VPC, which means it can run either on Fargate or on EC2. So I would like to say, okay, so how do I add the capability, hopefully this will work, to run the task on both Fargate and EC2. EC2, hopefully. That was really bad.
Oh,
and if that didn't work, oh, actually caught it. So I mean, my spelling is fine and I can spell as bad as I want.
Great.
So it tells you the task definition. You have to create the task definition with a required compatibility for EC2. And can you give me a JSON example of this? And we'll see if that works. And again, I haven't tried this before. I have dabbled around, but that uses a bind mount. So of course, it's not exactly what I wanted, but it can give you, in this case, an idea. So it's not 100% perfect. In other words, you still have work to do on your own as myself. And that's awesome because I like to learn and I like to understand everything all the way to the end of how I can actually use these things. And this is, for me, something which, besides the fact, of course, I'm not really a coder. I don't write code for a living. I can write code when I'm forced to and whatever else it is. And but this helps me on the operational side from my perspective. When I want to say, how do I actually do this in the cloud besides writing my application code? There's the other infrastructure, you say the lower level. In this case, for ECS, it's the fact of the tasks and the task definition and the cluster and all those things that I'm creating underneath in the background. This helps me with all those things which I don't have to. It is my personal assistants, which will provide me enough information for me to maybe get started, or even probably more than get started. And sometimes even further, give me perfect examples, one on top of the other, of how I can actually use this.
Yeah. Can I add something to what you said at the beginning? Because I think that is the key part. When you said, I think that it goes beyond what you said, that it allows you to remain like in the context of the IDE without switching to the browser. I think that the key part here is the generative part, right? The way that I usually talk about this is that if you use a traditional search mechanism that comes back with information, documentation, and everything, you end up being the integrator of those information, right? Because you have a job to be done usually, and your job to be done needs an artifact that is very specific to what you need to do. And usually the information that you're grabbing to build that artifact that you need may come from 2, 3, 4 different places, right? Because in one place you find something that you need then to augment with something else that you find on another site, maybe, or another piece of information that comes from somewhere else. Whereas the big difference here is that the integrator is your assistant. So you can prompt your assistant for your job to be done for the artifact that you need, that is very specific for what you need. And the assistant is going to do all this integration and provide you in the end, like the artifact that you need. Now, I totally agree with you that that artifact may not be exactly 100% the right thing that you want, but even if it is like 95% of what you need, you save 95% of the work that you would need to do,
Exactly.
right? So,
Exactly.
yeah.
And as we say with these kind of with Amazon Q, we're also for customers which actually use this, and they can also provide their own, hook this up to their own code bases, their own knowledge bases, their own documentation, which will provide a much more customized experience for each customer, which for the specific developer using that, which will be more focused and allow them to get much better results or more accurate information, which they're actually doing on their specific code base.
Yes, I want to address a couple of questions that are coming up on the chat, like the
Yeah.
price.
So where was that one? The cost
So
of using Amazon Q. So
yes,
PCS asks,
cost
what
of,
is the cost of using Amazon Q?
yeah. So I was alluding to at the beginning. Right now, Amazon Q is in public preview, which means that it's free for everybody to use. And you can use it in the console, you can use it in the IDE. You just sign up for a builder ID and you can log in into that into your ID or into the AWS toolkit using your builder ID, and you will find Q right there. When this goes GA, it will have a subscription, a monthly subscription. Things can change until we go GA, but right now, the pricing that we have published is that Amazon Q developer is $25. Whereas Amazon Q Business, which is the other expertise that we talked about at the beginning, which is not what Maish was showing, is $20. As I said, things are still up for potential change until we go GA, but this is what we publish. What is GA? Sorry, general availability, meaning that right now we are in technical preview, like the product is not officially available for being bought or subscribed to, but we want user to use it to learn, like, what you need more in terms of functionality and these sort of things. At some point, we're going to say we are GA, we are generally available, and the way that you're going to consume Amazon Q is through that subscription. Yeah, sorry for using too much jargon here.
No worries. And Jimmy, I had another question, which I hope, I think this is also something which I don't know if it's descriptive and not exact, I would say, number you can give it. But the question is, how well does Amazon Q keep context? In other words, doing step by step by step. We saw a bit of that in the demo itself of keeping the context of different things. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on this one as well.
Yeah, so in the chat is easy because we keep the context in the chat. So you can start with the prompt, you get an answer, and then you can continue to prompt, assuming that all the context of that conversation is part of the overall context. When it comes to coding, it gets more interesting because your code is part of the context, right? So one of the things that usually happens is that if you have a file, a Python file open, for example, and you prompt something like, tell me what this application is doing, it basically describes what that that the code that is in that file that you have open, and what actually does, right? So basically, when you prompt that, the file is part of the context, and it gets sent to the assistant, eventually to the LLM, and it will provide an explanation of what that code is. Yeah.
And I assume, of course, is because you mentioned the builder ID, which is the unique identifier of the user. This, of course, is segregated. It's not information which we're sharing between users. Everything is directly secure and encrypted, I would assume as well, from the specific user, and you're the only one which has the access to it. Unless, of course, it is a resource which you include for your whole organization, which can hook into, for example, a knowledge base or a code base and those kind of things. But the context itself is per user, correct?
Absolutely. Yes. Yep.
Okay. You can everybody keep the questions coming. I'm going to stop for 1 second for everybody that joined us after in the middle of the show. We're here talking a little bit about Amazon Q and using it with your daily your workflow with Amazon ECS. My guest today is Massimo Refere. And we showed the part of the IDE. But yes, the IDE also has a shell window as well. But I want to show specifically the fact of how you can also use, in this case, Code Whisperer, which also has a CLI, allows you to get a lot of insights from your CLI as well, how you can actually do this as well, and also speed up your regular day work or your day-to-day operation. So I'm going to go back to my screen, and in this case, I'm in my IDE. So this is a CLI plugin which you can put in, Code Whisperer CLI. Look it up on Google. I unfortunately don't have the link with me handy, and I'm not going to look for it now. But in any event, so Code Whisperer is a prompt inside a tool which you install inside your IDE. In this case, I'm going to first run something. In this case, it asked me to sign in. I actually want to do this probably it's better if I do it from the CLI. So in this case, I'm going to do CW Code Whisperer login. And this, if I could type properly, would help as well. Ask me how I want to sign into my account. You mentioned the builder ID, which is an identity which is per user, or you can use IAM Identity Center. If you're using an enterprise organizers, will use what was once called SSO, now called IAM Identity Center. I'm going to choose my builder ID. And what this will do, it will take me to a browser to log me in and make sure that the code is the same as before, which was the VZRF. And here I do have it. If I was not logged in currently into my builder ID, it would ask me to log in. I can confirm and continue. And from there, it connects that to your AWS account. It asks, of course, if you want to allow this to access your data, because you're interacting with your specific account. And Code Whisperer, why? I have no idea. Let's try this one more time. And of course, doing it live, always things go wrong. So we'll try this once more. And so the command line is called CAAI, AI. In this case, I would like to get, for example, I want to know, and you can already see what I've kind of written back. I want to give me the command that I of course, again, can go and run AWS ECS -- help. And
you said EC2.
I know that, whatever, EC2. ECS help will give me my commands, which I can run in my ECS. And of course, I can go through the documentation. But in order to speed things up, and I can't type again, it's late at night, so forgive me. So we're using Cloud Whisperer AI, AWS command to list all ECS clusters in the region. It will provide me the command that I need to run. And of course, we'll ask you if you want to run the command or execute the command. You can run it specifically from your shell. So in other words, it's a workflow that actually does that. I don't actually have to go into my documentation and run AWS ECS help and then run through it. It will give me this information. This information is automatically given to me for from my CLI. The thing also I found the cool thing about this is as well is it's not necessarily only for AWS commands. I think I didn't try this, but this is how do I write a for loop to go through numbers 1 to 5? See if this works.
Nice. Never tried this.
There we go. Shell gave me in my bash shell, gives me the syntax in my bash, how I would actually do this. So it's not only specifically focused on AWS. If you want to do, how would you do this in Python? How would you do it in Go? How can I, how do I exit out of VI instead of typing 50 different kind of commands on my computer and never getting out? What would be the key sequence to get out of Vim? So you can ask these kind of things and it should be able to give you, or how do I open a file in Nano? All those things will be able to give me as part of this Code Whisperer assistant for your actual CLI. And in this case, if I would like to, so we list my clusters, AI, AWS command to create task definition in cluster named demo from file hello world.json. So of course I'm getting very, very specific for the file.
Yeah. But this is actually the generation part that I was alluding to, right? So what would you need to do if you didn't have an assistant like this? You would need to go on the documentation website, look at the very generic syntax, and then you would be the integrator, meaning that you would copy and paste the base example, and then you would need to integrate with all of your information. I mean, this is a basic example, right? But it starts, showing how the assistant is integrating all of your stuff, all of your environment, all of your inputs into the final artifact that I was alluding to before. So I think that this is the part of the magic of these assistant, the fact that they integrate on your behalf the final artifact that you need, be it code or be it a CLI command or whatever.
Now, I'm not sure because I didn't test it and I don't know if it's going to actually work. But can this code assistant give me the fact of how many clusters do I have in my AWS account? Because it won't work, will it?
It will. If you ask it like this, it will probably give you the command to get the clusters in your AWS account.
Yeah. In this case, it will give me describe my instances, sort unique with the amount of count.
Oh,
okay.
In this case, the prompt was even too vague because, I mean, you are asking like clusters, but you're not saying ECS cluster. So there are.
So let's try that differently.
Maybe a couple of dozens of type of clusters on AWS.
Exactly. So let's try how many ECS clusters.
If you say this, maybe it will tell you, it's ECS.
So if I do more specific, so in other words, of course, you have to. I'm not a prompt engineer. I hope I never become a prompt engineer because even though I assume everybody at one stage will have to know how to take a course in prompt engineering to know how to write a good prompt in order to get the most out of these tools. But of course, the more specific and more focused you are on what you're actually asking from the assistant or the generative AI which you're working with, the tool will give you a more specific and more focused answer.
Yes. But back to your attempt, it's an obvious expectation that you do not just want to get like the command to list the clusters, but you want your assistant because it's helping you figure out all the phases of the software development lifecycle. You want, which includes operations. You want your assistant to be able to tell you the the clusters that you have, right? So today it doesn't do it, but it's an obvious expectation that a lot of customers have, that the assistant should be able to do this. And yeah,
And
a lot of work
hopefully,
to do.
hopefully we will get there one day, sooner than later.
Yes, yes. Stay tuned. Stay tuned.
So that was my demos for today, and I apologize again for my horrendous typing and all the typos in the meantime. But as we say, we like doing these things at live, specifically around containers from the couch. I see there weren't very many more questions, so on the chat. So I had one for you. Where do you see this going in the future? I mean, in theory, today you could take any person who knows how to type on a keyboard and pretty much say, okay, ask some kind of generative AI tool how to write the code for me, how to deploy it. Not always will you get the 100% best practices. Maybe it won't scale properly, but where is this going in the future? Where do you see that happening? How do you see that happening?
Um, I think that from the capabilities perspective, uh, this is this is going very far, right? So if you think about the history of these assistants, and Amazon Q is an example, and I'm saying Amazon Q slash Code Whisperer. We started with inline coding, where you are in your IDE and you're editing a program and you prompt inside the program the next like function that you want to build or stuff like that. And then we moved into the chat, which provides more flexibility for the user to interact with the assistant. And now we're talking about these code generation agent-based workflow that exists inside Amazon Q, that you didn't show in your demo, but it would be interesting to talk a little bit about this. So what you have been showing is a back and forth interaction inside the IDE with the chat, where you could use the chat to build an entire application, right?
Yeah.
Or an entire functionality inside the application. It may take you like dozens of prompts to build that in pieces, like what you were describing, right? But the other thing that Amazon Q is going to be able to do, it's actually being able to do right now, is using this capability that we call feature development, which allows you to prompt at the higher level, right? So when you invoke what we call the feature development capability, you're not doing a back and forth. You're not in control of the workflow of what you're building in pieces, but you want the assistant to take ownership of the workflow to build that more complex feature. So, for example, you can prompt the Amazon Q in this case with something like add a new REST API to this application being the application that you have in your open in your IDE, your project. Add a REST API that does XYZ, right? That exposes maybe a table or an item from a table, a DynamoDB table, or whatever you want that feature to do. And Amazon Q is going to detach from your workflow and go out and try to build that feature for you, right? It's not a back and forth like it's in the chat. It's a more asynchronous kind of invocation to the assistant. And what you get in return is not an answer like you were showing in your back and forth in the chat. What you're getting in return is basically equivalent to like a multi-file modification, right? The way that this feature development capability surfaces in Code Catalyst is through APR, right? So you basically open an issue in Code Catalyst, you assign it to Amazon Q, and Amazon Q will generate a PR that address the issue that you have open. Now, in the IDE, this is surfacing with the different workflows, which is a prompt. You do slash tab and you prompt basically the same as the issue that I was alluding to. And what you get in return is these are the files that I have modified or the files that I have created if they didn't exist. And then you can explore these files, right? At which point you can commit the change, and then you can open the PR in the IDE. So the IDE is a little bit more atomic in terms of what you can do, whereas in Code Catalyst is like a finite workflow that generates a PR in the end. But this is an example of where these tools are pushing. If you think where we started, like a simple prompt to get like a one line of a function, it's incredible. I mean, the potential here is very high. And when you think, going back to your comment about it doesn't need to be perfect, if you think about getting back either a PR or a bunch of files that it has modified that are like 80-90% correct, I mean, it has done 80-90% of the work that you would have had to do.
So that brings me to another question, of course. Are we all going to become obsolete as people operating systems and writing code? I mean, if we can kind of let Amazon Q or tools like this to generate those PRs for us or add those actual pieces of code, where's the value of us as people instead of letting machines do these things? I mean, there's always the fact of Skynet and Terminator 2, whatever else it is, the machines taking over. So where's the value of us here? What is the value that we bring here in this case?
I think, I mean, we don't have a crystal ball to see where this is going. The way that I think about this is that it gives you a boost in productivity, right? The usual example that I use in this case is I think about these assistants more like an autopilot on a plane, right? If I am a pilot, if I have a license to be a pilot, I could use the autopilot as a way to remove the undifferentiated heavy lifting of having to care about an airplane for 8 hours through flying over the ocean, right? But you need to be a pilot to be able to use the autopilot in the right way. You wouldn't want to be on a plane with me because there is an autopilot, right? That's kind of the joke that I usually use. So I think that these tools work great in the hands of someone that knows what they're doing because it can help boost their productivity a lot. So there was a funny discussion that I've seen with a customer where someone was saying, well, but what these tools are able to do is they're able to let my developer to spend just a couple of hours on stuff that they used to spend 8 hours on or more, and then after 2 hours they go home. I mean, that's kind of the whole purpose of this tool, right? You can either
Exactly.
go home after 2 hours, or you can actually do four things instead of one in a single day, right? So that's kind of the productivity boost that I was alluding to. I think that there is a notion also of these democratizing access to technologies that would be more austic to onboard with, but I'm not sure if these tools, at least in the foreseeable future, could turn like a junior engineer into a principal engineer out of the box, right? I'm
Yeah.
very doubtful
I mean,
that they can do this. But the onboarding part, one other point that I wanted to make is that the onboarding part is very important. I usually say that we spend a lot of time talking about this notion of um, uh, uh, English to code, like you prompt in English and you get a piece of code, which is what you were showing here in the demos. There is a lot of use cases for that are the other way around, what I call code to English, where there is a bunch of code out there that is without documentation, that is very difficult to read. And this assistant, Amazon Q specifically, is incredibly well suited to point to like a code base and say, explain this code base for me, right? How do I reason about this code base? What does this code base do? Where does this code base do X, Y, Z? And it will point you to the piece of code that does X, Y, Z. So this is still part of the productivity, but it's different from I want to build code, right? It's instead of wasting or spending, I don't want to say wasting, but instead of spending 2 weeks to learn this new code base to then be productive, I want to do that in 4 hours. And these tools actually allows you to do that.
Yeah. I love that answer, specifically about the autopilot. Massimo, I want to thank you very much for your time today. We're going to end a little bit early today because we're going to be ending early today. I want to thank everybody on the chat, of course. So Jimiego, PCS, and 0x Malv, I think I didn't mess that up too badly, who are participating in the chat. Thank you very much. If anybody wants to get hold of you, Massimo, I see you put your Twitter. Is that okay? Somebody can reach out to you on Twitter?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. My DMs are open. That's actually my username. So if you want to send me an email, it's that@amazon.com. If you prefer email, either works. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much. So if anybody has any questions, they can reach out to you to ask you further. I hope we don't get too many bombardments from the show, but even if so, it was well worth the count because we love hearing the feedback from our customers. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the subscribe button, and you can get any notifications of new upcoming streams. Of course, the same thing. Don't forget to subscribe to our Twitch channel, AWS Twitch channel, where we have multiple different shows on a huge number of different kind of topics before and after throughout the day. And we will be back again next week on another Containers from the Couch. Same time, Thursday, 12 o'clock Pacific time. And Massimo, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, and bye, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Bye, everybody. Have a great day.